On this episode, we share the highs and lows of what it's like to record, produce, and release your own podcast with someone who's been on a similar journey. My guest is Richard, who, like me, started his podcast in one direction only to have it grow into something totally different. Richard started his show as the Men of the House podcast, or MOTH for short. However, when you do something long enough, it naturally evolves, and it should. And for him, MOTH transformed into your peak performance partner. We also talk about his time working at a tattoo, smoke, and sex shop, a place where you can make all your bad decisions in one convenient location. Let's jump in.
Something like what you're doing. I'm like, I'm just a conduit. I'm just the messenger for people, other people's compelling stories or message, or is it something interesting, something I've never heard of, or something that, kind of a, if you can help people see things a different way, see a different perspective, and, however you want to say that, a different perspective, a different way to see things, think a way they've never thought. I think that's kind of the key,
You know what? It is the key, but I get this impression. I need to fix this light real quick.
Now, did you do all your own tattoos
Like draw?
or tattoo them?
Oh, fuck no. Like, my whole back is done.
Okay.
All my ribs. Like,
Have you done any of your own?
like on myself? No. I talked about it.
I I worked at a tattoo supply / smoke / sex shop, and
Wait, back up. Okay, so you worked at a tattoo / sex shop. Wait, sorry, tattoo supplies sex.
smoke, sex, tattoo supplies.
What was it called?
The hippie,
Wow.
owned by a guy from Pakistan. Came here with $300 in his pocket.
Well, he picked. I mean,
He started off, I think, doing sex, maybe, but yeah,
he was like, "I'm making too much money. Let's get into tattoo supplies."
and smoke. But we'd
And
have all the artists come, but we'd sell tattoo guns and kits and all that. And so I could get them at cost. And so I always considered grabbing them because we would have dudes that come in and that are wanting to tattoo on themselves. Because now, I haven't had a tattoo in, my wife and I were in 2006. And she got me this for our 6-year anniversary. I got it at Steadfast over by Bone Daddy's.
I know. I've been tattooed at Steadfast before.
Yeah. So
Who tattooed you?
Pete.
Pete tattooed me. Pete, I have dog tags around my neck, and Pete tattooed those on me. What do you miss about Austin?
Access
To stuff.
to stuff.
Yeah.
The
Hubbub.
the laid backness, kind of there's all this gay stuff going on now. Like everybody needs to be included. Couldn't tell you how many fucking people I worked with from 29 to 2015 that were gay in the ER downtown, and nobody gave a fuck. And now all of a sudden it's like everybody makes a big deal about people being gay, I guess. I don't know. It seems like more people want recognition, but I mean, it has been 9 years. 9 years is kind of a long time.
Well, I think of it more like this. I think with all this stuff that people, they want to be included.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is fair because that is a human experience to be included in everything. But here's the thing. You can't force inclusion. Like you can't force your way in, into being included. You have to be a good person. You have to help other people. And then that's what gets you included. You know what I mean? And I think that, you know, there's a demand to include. Was inclusion the right word? There's a demand to be included, but you can't demand it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, like the people you work with, they weren't demanding anything.
No.
They were just there working. Like they're just like, hey, we're here to work.
And
you know what I mean?
you were, you know, in an emergency room, you
ain't got time for that shit.
Your worth, either you can do the job or you can't. That's all anybody cares about.
Yeah.
Either you can do the job and be part of a team, or you fuck off to a different department, or you're in the step unit watching sore throats and psych patients. They're not letting you take care of, you know, the level 1 traumas that come in. So it's, you know, that's what mattered. And so I think when you leave that environment, like, because I come from the military kitchens and then like emergency room, and it's very, can you do the job? Communication is kind of a
necessity.
Yeah, but it's very, things need to happen quickly. So
it's very black. The communication is very black and white.
Yeah. Or very
direct.
There you go. And so, you know, I learned going into a more sensitive environment, you know, where I managed mostly women. It was an adjustment for me.
Well, I have a buddy that's a firefighter, and we always talk about how his job takes away his lack of empathy. You know what I mean? Because when you see really horrible things, it's hard to have empathy over like your boyfriend broke up with you. You know what I mean? And so, you know, you can be sympathetic, but it's hard to really have real true empathy, and that affects him in his everyday life. And I got to think there's some level of like military emergency room that, you know, like you don't have time to really be about your emotions in those moments. You know what I mean? And then when you get in your regular life where you need to be with your partner or whoever, kids, then it's hard to kind of turn that on, because you're like, this is not a big deal. I just saw somebody lost their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, somebody's life is never the same.
Right.
You know, they're walking away changed forever. And not just them, their family too. You know? I didn't realize it wasn't until everything slowed down in the pandemic that it was like the train of all the years, 12 years of shit, just like.
I mean, that's such an interesting thing. I think that's a good way to describe what happened to everyone.
Right.
Anything that was going on to their life. Okay, we'll say, for example, you were getting a divorce.
Oh.
And then the pandemic happens. And then you go, well, you can't leave. And you're like, fuck. You know what I mean? Like nobody can do shit. And now you're stuck in the house, and now your kids are at home. Like think about how many people that happened to, you know? And I don't feel like people have really recovered. I don't know if they'll ever recover. I will never be the same, but I'm very happy how I changed. Because
Agreed.
I chose that time to put in work.
I don't know that I put in work. I did. Maybe I just didn't know I was doing it. Even if it was the wrong work.
Did you start the podcast during the pandemic?
Mm-mm.
When did you start it?
9 months ago. 8 months ago.
Okay.
July 26th, 2023.
Were you working during the pandemic?
9 months into it.
As a nurse?
As a manager. I managed 2 ambulatory centers, like clinics, with multiple service lines, gyms attached to them.
What was that like?
A lot of bullshit. Glad I don't do it anymore.
And
It was crazy.
It was a crazy time, right?
It was, but the thing is was it true? Were we lied to? And then to think like all this happened, like we have a 10-year-old, and so she was like in first grade, kindergarten. She missed like some of these key like math things. But still, I'm fucking repeating the 4th grade, and I have a master's degree
Right.
because I have to help her do math. And I don't understand new math and the way they teach it. I don't know what's wrong with old math.
It makes me think of old Coke and new Coke. You know what I mean?
Oh, this kind.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think old Coke was probably okay. I think in both kinds of Coke, that the old Coke was better than new Coke because new Coke probably has fentanyl in it. It probably kills people, right?
You have to test it.
Yeah. See, back in the day, the old fashioned Coke,
Yeah.
Coke Classic did not have to test for fentanyl.
No, but it's just been like, I don't know. Like, I'm just so, it's just so perplexing that it kind of happened, that it felt like the wool was pulled over everyone's eyes. And I don't know what we gained out of it.
I think the most shocking thing out of the whole thing is how easy it is to scare people. I mean, it's incredibly easy to get people to be scared. And that kind of sucks. Cause I mean, my favorite scenario is zombie apocalypse. I love zombie shit. Like I love the concept of The Walking Dead and how they built their tools and all the things. But I just keep thinking, I'm like, if the zombie apocalypse happens, like half these people are just going to die of just like sheer like stupidity or obesity or lack of medication or like like a lot of people just ain't going to there's going to be a lot of zombies like up front. You know what I mean? I don't think we're ready. And they're not going to be like World War Z, by the way. Zombies aren't fast. I just want to make sure that I make a statement. Zombies are not fast. They move slow. This is bullshit.
You got to do some cardio.
With those zombies, there's no cardio. Like they're just going to fucking, they move faster than like monkeys. Like it's crazy. Like everybody else has zombies moving slow, except for World War Z.
I don't think.
You know what? It's because like they were like, Brad Pitt could take out slow zombies so easy. We got to make it more challenging for him and make them fast.
Oh my God. So yeah, fear mongering. That's kind of the whole with. I mean, I don't know if it was scary because I was working downtown when the whole Ebola thing happened too.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I was scared of that. Like when I saw that on the news, I was really scared.
Well, imagine being in a level 1 trauma center where the Ebola patient's going to go.
Yeah.
And so, but we had like, they're kind of like negative pressure rooms and whatnot. And so we would like designate rooms. And then like our educator, she was a single mom, but older. And she's like, I volunteered to go in and, you know, if there's a patient, to gown up and all that and go in with them. But, you know, I think the scariest thing was probably like in triage, like when people go into the front desk and you don't really know what they're there for.
It could be anything.
And that was kind of the whole thing too. I mean, it changed the way, like with COVID, you know, if you use my chart, which all hospital systems have, is they even changed how they submit when you're scheduling an appointment, the screening questions, you know, have you been exposed to COVID or around anyone for 14 days? Do you have a new or worsening cough? Do you have fever? Because those were all the telltale signs in the beginning. But yeah.
Also, there are telltale signs of just being sick, by the way. I just point that out.
Which typically like you would list in the whenever like you put in the appointment information.
Yeah, I like that we just started doing that. Like we just started saying like, hey, do you feel bad? I know you're at the doctor's office, but do you feel bad? That's what I was wondering. Like, are you here? Oh, you're just visiting? It's cool.
Yeah, but it was a good thing getting laid off.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the way we handle COVID. Like I do think, okay, we'll just say for shits and giggles that this is really something they've never seen before and that we should have been really worried.
Right.
you know, there's how much is too much precaution? You know what I mean? Like when you don't know what you're dealing with, because like think about this. So when all this shit goes down, when they shut down the world, like I was like in Vegas the weekend before. Like so that Monday they shut the world down. Like I was in Vegas like the like Thursday through whatever before, and it was fucking crazy because there was like, you know, there was whispers of this shit. So there was like nobody there. Every dude that went in the bathroom washed his hands. Every single one. Every single person washed their hands always. Like, you know, not one guy walked out there washing his hands. And I'd never seen that before. I mean, you always see dudes walking out, not washing their hands, right? But we were just walking through the hotels and there was nobody. It was like so weird. And then we went to a strip club and it was like no COVID. Like COVID didn't even exist. Like not even the thought of COVID possibly happening. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, this is weird, you know? And then we get home and then the whole world shuts down. And I was like, wow. Like, I'd actually gone out there with my financial advisor and he went home early because his wife was concerned that like he wouldn't be able to get home. You know what I mean? But it sounds so wild to say that now, but like at the time,
right.
It was
they could have canceled flights while you were there.
Yeah. My girlfriend, she goes, I want you to come home. I was like, I'm not coming home. I was like, I'm in Vegas. I was like, do you know how much it would cost? Like, you know, rearrange my flight. And I was like, we don't even know I was like, we don't know what's going on. They're not talking about shutting anything that, you know, so like, just like, it's all good, you know, but in the back of my mind, I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if this is true. Like, I was like, I don't even know if I believe what I'm saying right now. You know what I mean? But I also knew that like, I trusted that everything would be okay. You know what I mean? I also had never seen anything like COVID before. So now if you were telling me, hey, you're in Vegas and the whole world might shut down, I'm like, I'm going to get my ass home, you know? Since we're kind of on the subject of COVID, I want to bring up something really quick. During the pandemic, it's like every restaurant got those parking spaces where you could pull up and they bring the food to you. And some of those places have dipped out and doing that. They don't do that no more. They won't bring the food out to you. I'm like, what? I was good enough to bring food out to me before, but you can't bring food out to me now. You know what I mean? And so I'm kind of upset about it. I thought that was going to be a permanent change. You know, like you can get booze delivered to your house now. You know, like there were some really good changes that happened. I thought like being able to pick up food from my window was going to be one of them. And now I got to go back to Sonic.
I always order through the app at Sonic. And
then go pick it up from the window?
I just pull into the parking space, type in my number, and you go.
You're missing the whole thing of like, can I take your
I
order? And then they don't hear you and understand. You got to re-explain it.
I do Uber Eats, and so I'm used to
all these
pulling into parking spots.
Wait, you drive for Uber Eats or you get Uber Eats?
Drive. I haven't in a while because I feel like fares have gone down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what I started doing because I applied for a bunch of healthcare jobs, didn't get any. I interviewed at the prison in Kyle to run their whole healthcare thing. And then they offered me a job at the Garza unit in Beeville. And I was like, fuck that. Like, I'm not moving. We'd be 5 hours away from where I grew up, where we live. And then we'd be an extra hour away from the Woodlands, where my wife's family is and our older daughters are.
Beeville's way down there.
Fuck yeah. And I was like, and they were going to pay me less than what I was making when I got laid off. I was like, no.
No, thank you, sir.
Yeah. And I'm like, so, you know, those were the kind of jobs that were being offered to me. And I'm like, so my wife, she started with the Uber Eats and I was like, great. And I rode with her one day and then I was like, I'll try it. And I ended up doing it. And that's kind of where I like it. I get to drive around, listen to podcasts, but I'm still doing something. I'm making money as I'm driving.
Did you ever watch Taxi Cab Confessions? Do you know what that is?
On HBO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like Chris Rock made that his own Taxi Cab Confessions on the Chris Rock show. It was also on HBO. But I want to drive for Uber and just set up like a 360 and just do like a podcast like with every person that gets in the car.
I do mostly Eats. I don't pick up people that much.
But I'm just saying like, I would like to I'm just like wherever you're going, I'm just doing like a quick interview and then I just post a bunch of small interviews for the day.
The way to do it would be, they say I mean, I don't know, like, but for the only way I've considered people is actually by watching airport queues.
What's that?
You with as opposed to like getting some drunk asshole off of 6th Street.
Oh, you like look when planes land and try to be at the airport and pick up.
Apparently, they have something you can set up to where you can see, but people can also schedule ahead of time. Like,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
you need me to pick you up from your house and take you to Austin Bergstrom, then you schedule it. And so you can get on a schedule. Or if you're being picked up, hey, I need to be picked up and dropped off at this time and it's scheduled, then you can actually, so you can kind of know ahead of time.
So you're saying I could have multiple episodes of this podcast with the same person?
You could.
I'm just
You
kidding.
could.
I'm kidding. She's like, they're not even going to let you. You know what I mean?
But the thing is, you know, the thing with the airport thing too, though, is you could be like, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Are you from Austin? Are you visiting? Are you here for a conference? Are you here for whatever?
Well, look, surprise, surprise. I've already said this before on my podcast that when I get in a Uber, we're probably going to get in the conversation unless you just don't want to talk to me. But, you know, so, I mean, and then sometimes I get in the conversations. I'm like, shit.
I've never been in an Uber.
You've never ridden in an Uber?
Nope.
What?
The last time I've ridden in anything close was
A taxi? When's the last time you were in a taxi?
my wife and I saw Gary Clark Jr. New Year's Eve at Antone's when it was still on 4th Street.
Uh-huh.
Whatever year that was the last time. And we stayed down.
And Gary Clark Jr. still probably wasn't as big as he is now, right?
Oh, no. He was.
Because he used to play on 6th Street all the time.
Yeah. So it was a small New Year's Eve show.
Yeah.
And then we stayed on 11th Street at a hotel, even though we lived in Cedar Creek, but my daughter wasn't born yet. And so like we woke up the next day, went to Frank's, and I had shrimp and grits and brunch cocktails. And then we went home and like went to sleep, you know, like in the afternoon again. Like that was the last time we were in a cab because we took the cab from 11th to 4th.
Man, me and my girlfriend recently, my daughter, she spent the first night away from us or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, this is what it's like just to be with you. You know what I mean? And like, and we had a really good time. And and I realized like, we need this to be good parents. You know what I mean? It's important for us to do these things, to take care of ourselves so that we can, you know, have a good experience with her. Because the next day we went to Disney on Ice.
Oh,
Man, it's such a scam.
Disney period. We went years ago and we went June 6th and it was so fucking hot.
Oh, you went to Disney?
Yeah, real Disney.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm like, you want to talk about, by the time we stood waiting just for the ferry to go to like Princess Island or whatever the fuck it was, both kids, my daughter and my niece, were so hot. They didn't want to be in the stroller. They didn't want to walk. Me and my brother-in-law were having to carry them. They rode one ride and wanted to go back to the room and go to the pool.
You ever been in one of those like negative degree bars that like it's like made of ice on the inside? You know what I'm talking about
Yeah,
though?
I do.
Okay, one, just don't go. Like it's not worth it unless you're just doing it for the shtick of it. But it's like it's crazy because you have to put on like these giant jackets and these special gloves so your hands don't stick to the glass made out of ice that you're going to put on your lips, which is nuts. You know what I mean? And then they pour your drinks and your shots in there, you know, and stuff like that. But like, you know, everybody in there's in jackets, freezing their ass off, you know.
At the Grinch Christmas thing, it was the same situation. So you put the things on. I don't think you put gloves on. We brought our own, but within the thing, they had a bar inside that had like, I don't know if it was like ice tables and shit, but the drinks were like, I don't know, $24 maybe. It was expensive.
I'll tell you what, I've never thought about this before, but I don't know how I feel about them serving alcohol at kids' events. You know what I mean? Because I'm pretty sure when I went to that Disney thing, they were selling booze at the counter. You know what I mean?
The same with the Grinch.
Yeah, I mean, but like also as a parent, I'm kind of like, I get it.
Well,
you know, you want to have like maybe a glass of wine, so like maybe this Grinch is not as, you know. But
the thing is it wasn't just that. You get adults without kids who get together, and there's some people who are like fanatical about Christmas, Halloween, Thanksgiving. I'm not.
You want to hear something wild? So when I was we're looking up the rules of the Disney on Ice thing, right? I'm not even making this fucking up. One of the one of the rules was you cannot dress up if you're over the age of 14. And I was like, they have to make a rule for this that you can't dress up? Are you kidding me? That's crazy.
Why would it matter?
Well, I was thinking more of like, are there a lot of adults? Because, like an adult dressing up is different. Like they'll get crazy. Like it'll become Comic-Con. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But like, do we have to tell them not to? You know what I mean?
Believe me, whenever I worked downtown in the ER, I loved working the holidays more than because the shit you see Halloween coming to the ER.
What's the most interesting character that came into the ER on Halloween?
They're usually drunk girls in skimpy outfits. Sure.
Did you ever have like any really badass costumes where you're like, wow, that's a good costume?
No. No.
So you're saying people that go to the ER on Halloween don't have good costumes? They're too busy getting lit.
Yes. Or they're probably the people with great costumes probably make it home responsibly.
Yeah, I'm big on Halloween costumes. And I did not drink very much whenever I was dressed up, like when I was in my costume.
It's usually the younger crowd, especially young women in high heels and scantily clad outfits. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you're just asking for, you combine that much booze, that many people, that much activity, you're asking for an injury of some sort.
You're not setting yourself up for success.
There you go.
I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. That's kind of how it was, but you get all kinds of stuff. I mean, I was there. I took the phone call when the guy was on Red River, like ran over all the people.
No way. Wow.
I was there like when a balcony collapsed and all these kids were on the balcony at a party. I was there one New Year. We had somebody shot on campus at the corner. They were smoking, and this guy and this woman were smoking, and this psych patient left, and he thought that they were talking about him. He shot the guy point blank in the chest, and he'd had the gun in the bag the whole time inside the hospital.
No way.
Which we had no idea. And it was after that, of course, we got like the cameras started working, you got metal detectors, all that shit. But, I can remember Art Acevedo coming in and being like, well, I just need to know if this is the last homicide of this year or the first homicide of this year. Because it was New Year's Eve.
Oh, wow.
And so, but we thought it was an assault. Like I was walking back with the charge nurse from like one area to another, and we heard code gray, which is like that assaultive behavior. And so we run out to the waiting room because we're right by an exit. And then this lady just walks in going, he just shot him in the chest, And then all
that
of a
was
sudden,
his wife?
No, it was some other lady. I think maybe the lady who was there smoking, talking to him.
Oh, that's what I meant. Like the lady was with him.
Yeah. And then it was like, just grab the code down stretcher, go to the corner, pick him up. And they got him in there, and he was already had the death shit. So he was dead, but they cut him open and tried like massaging his heart. And because I know when they cut to, it was like so fast, like one of the doctors got cut a little bit.
Oh, dang.
And then they nicked his diaphragm, and that was kind of my joke, was probably that killed him. Not the gunshot wound to the chest.
Yeah. It's just
point blank. But yeah,
So you have seen probably a lot of senseless trauma, I would assume, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that happens? What do you think that says about us and our society and our world and us as like, human beings with each other, that like that guy smoking on the corner, just minding his own business.
He was there visiting like his mom or someone on a different floor.
Yeah, like so, you know, and he was just wrong place, wrong time.
I think people don't care enough about other people, but I don't know if it's a self-absorption thing. It's hard to say. I'm an only child, so I've always had to be solo, but I
What-
always wanted a brother.
What do you mean that like you always had to be solo? Just like that you were an only child?
Yeah, meaning like you didn't have anyone to count on. You didn't have a brother to talk to. You didn't have anyone this or that to interact with necessarily, other than friends. But you know, we had a foreign exchange student one year, but I'm thinking like, I don't know if that made me empathetic, sensitive to other people, but I can remember being a young person. And I don't know how young, but I can remember going to the doctor. Maybe it was when I volunteered at the hospital or worked at the hospital first time, like in the early 2000s. That I can remember seeing like people in wheelchairs, like going into the thing and like hanging on to life and feeling empathetic towards them and going like, you know, for people, some people are afraid of death, some people are not. But does the fear come from not knowing what's on the other side? Because you will see people who are in the direst of conditions, but they hang on to life. They fight for it, you know? You see people grasp and hold on and fight for life and do everything they can to get it out of it. And I don't know if, you know, I don't know what it was about me that recognized that or felt empathetic towards it, but definitely feeling different than most people who are kind of wrapped up in their own shit, I guess you could say. Like, I've always thought it was, maybe I've always felt like selfless servant type of person, where some people are just not like that, you know?
I do think that you know, I have a brother, and you know, my dad's like one of 7, right? You know, every person you add to the mix changes the mixture of the chemistry of it, right? And so if you're an only child, you know, I would assume that you're shown a lot of sympathy and empathy from whoever's raising you, I would hope, right? If, you know, they're together, and that, you know, hopefully you want to give that out to others because that's what you were, you know, shown. I think sometimes in a bigger family, or even just a person that has too much going on in their own life, has a hard time setting all their shit aside and being empathetic. So maybe that's where it comes from.
I was also like, I got burned as a child. Like, you can tell the texture on my legs.
Oh, dang.
And I spent 3 months in the burn unit in Galveston at Shriners. I was probably 1, and my parents were living in Pasadena at the time. And I don't know if spending all that time, because it's down both legs, if that having to go to doctors all the time, growing up with asthma, being like a super sick child, having to go to a pulmonologist, I don't know if it was my own experience of going to doctors that also made me empathetic and, you know, towards others, or even want to go into that field. Like, you know, when I try to dissect it all, I don't know, because I did work in healthcare twice, but I was a personal trainer in between. And so it's always been like service, but I also worked in restaurants for a long time, which is still service.
You know, I think that we all should be in service of others. And I think that, you know, back to something we were talking about before, the jobs that should get the most credit for them being the most service, being like nurses and teachers and things like that, are some of the people that get the least amount of pay for the great service that they do. So it's kind of unfortunate that everything's kind of ass backwards, is that the people doing the least amount of service are making the most amount of money. You know what I mean? I was going to say that includes our government.
Yeah.
The people making the most amount of money are giving us the least amount of service. You know what I mean? Like, but I also have the theory of like, well, this is just my opinion. We live in the greatest country. I don't want to live anywhere else. This is amazing, right? But are we naive to think that like our government wouldn't want to run their government like the way everybody else does because they have more control over their people? And that it's not a crazy thought that they would be like, man, we're the best place ever. And we have the least amount of control. This is bullshit. We need to get these motherfuckers in line with some COVID
So,
lockdowns.
you know, the interesting thing is government workers don't make a ton. If you're in the military, or like, let's say, even if you're an FBI agent or something, you start off on a GS level, or I worked for the IRS, and it's not great. But I just interviewed somebody on my podcast who was doing like energy efficiency type shit, where they would go to schools and stuff and make sure that whatever for the, you know, that it was insulated. I don't know what the fuck it's called. But the point was, is he said that they made a lot of money because they were government contracts. So it's funny that the government doesn't pay their own workers, but then they pay a shit ton because this guy was making six figures.
Well, I mean, it ain't that funny because somebody's getting a cut when they're contracting. When they're not contracting, they ain't getting no cut of no workers' money. You know what I mean? But look, this is like, here's the thing. I'm not a government hater because I'm kind of like, you know, like they're going to run shit how they want to run shit. That's what every country does. But also, like, don't get upset if I don't want to vote for you either. You know what I mean? Because, you know, like you're not showing me anything that's helping me as an American in my personal little world, which I feel like is a lot of people's little worlds. You know what I mean?
I would say that I definitely think since the pandemic, and because the way the government was involved in that, I
got a little handsy.
I feel like you've seen, and it could just be the space I'm in and what I'm going for, but I feel like I've seen a lot more entrepreneurship
coming out of the pandemic. I think that people kind of didn't have a choice. You know what I mean? Because they had lost their jobs. They got to work. So they like figured something out. But then they figured out like, oh, like I can make money on my own. I don't have to worry about the government. Like I don't want to say I have to pay taxes, but like
until it's tax time,
you know, but like, well, but you know, as a self-employed person, I get taxed way heavier than someone that's employed by somebody else because they're trying to make sure that if I lie on my taxes, that they're still getting their cut. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, but I would much rather be in this position being self-employed than I would be like working for someone else. I just like, you know, and I think that like a lot of people probably realize that they probably just didn't know they could work for themselves. They didn't want to, they had a solid job. They didn't want to take a chance. And the pandemic gave them a chance to take a chance on whatever it was because they weren't doing anything else. You know what I mean? I started my podcast during the pandemic, not necessarily because I was like needed a job, but I needed something to do. You know what I mean? So I chose that. And so then it's become this though.
So what were you doing in the pandemic?
Like for work? So I'm a life coach, or in a nutshell, I'm a life coach, but I attack my clients from three phases of life, mental, physical, and metaphysical. Right. So during the pandemic, I was just trying to find ways to see my clients. So whether it be on Zoom or in person, outdoors or whatever. But the thing that was wild for me is like my experience was a lot like probably like restaurant servers and people who had to work at grocery stores and stuff. Like their world went on. My world went on. I never spent a day home during the pandemic. I was out every single day because I had to work. You know what I mean? So I was going and meeting people outside, or I was Zooming with them. I was doing stuff here in the garage. You know,
but you don't actually go to a facility and train or anything.
I used to when I was strictly a trainer. There are some of my clients that I meet like we'll meet and we'll do some physical kind of rehab work, and then we sit and we go over some other stuff for like their life and stuff like that. But like, the facility that I would use, it shut down. Like, you know, it was a gym, so it closed. You know what I mean? It killed that gym. Like the guy that owns it, we're really good friends, and he hasn't recovered yet. You were saying that like this kind of like this period that you went through where you're kind of trying to figure yourself out,
Uh-huh.
and then you start the podcast and you're like, I'm in this new place.
Uh-huh.
So we're very close in the same age.
47. I'll be 48 in June.
So yeah, so same, then born in the same year, right? And it was a very similar experience for me in starting the podcast and having like new awareness and new beliefs and like things like that. And I wonder, sometimes I wonder is, do we just need to get to basically, if, you know, 40, if we live to be 90 and 45 is the midpoint, is there something that happens in these 40 to 45, 48, 50, 40 to 50 years, like between the ages of 40 to 50, that allow us to have you hope, have new perspective, new ideas, new thoughts, new awareness, you know? Carl Jung spoke of that, like in the ages of 45, that, you know, he would have a new awareness or something, like his life changed or something. I just wonder, like, if that's kind of.
Well, no, because I was listening on, it might have been the Timmy episode when you were talking about, you know, how he had always kind of been comfortable with it, who he was and known kind of who he was, even though he masked it a little bit with alcohol. And, you know, I think you had mentioned that you were just now kind of getting back into maybe allowing yourself to be the truest form of yourself. That, you know, I guess you'd mentioned at one point in time that, of course, too, you had a closet full of clothes that you didn't really wear because you were kind of not confident enough to wear them, even though they were kind of cool clothes. And, but it was interesting when you said that you felt like it seemed like it may have said more recently, because I was sitting there going, my experience has been similar in that, you know, if I got laid off 4 years ago, that was a piece of me, but wearing slacks and a shirt every day sure as fuck wasn't me.
I wonder, you know, like I feel like they don't use this term anymore, midlife crisis. Like, I mean, I feel like it's always used as a joke, right? But I wonder if a midlife crisis is just that rapid awareness that kind of happens, I guess, in that period of time, and then not either handling it or not being able to handle it, or like understanding it or not understanding it. Because I could see a world in which everything that came in front of me in the last like 5 to 10 years, I could have rejected. You know what I mean? Like the thoughts and ideas I have now about how I want to be as a person, but I didn't. And so I think it's been very positive and helpful for me. But I could see how someone would go, oh, no. I don't want to make those changes. I don't want to do those things. I can't change like that. And then have a very different experience.
And see, I think my change was forced somewhat through the layoff, but it's really been a process, and it's still been a process. Like, even let's say the past 5 months, it was kind of like I tried applying for all these jobs. I had like a spreadsheet of like 300 jobs over the 3 years I was unemployed, that I had interviews, all this stuff. None of them worked out. And so I started Ubering just to make money, almost like waiting tables or bartending. It's one of those things you can do and you're guaranteed to get cash then. But it was only through kind of starting the podcast and speaking openly and freely that you're kind of able to step into who you are, even though, you know, like some of the things I say sometimes, like, especially on a solo episode, I might be like, you know, whether I'm admitting like having fucked up thoughts or problems I had, that whether, it feels embarrassing or you're like, man, I can't believe I said that. I'm going to be judged. Then at some point you're just like, fuck it. And so like accepting some of the things, I justify it with going like, okay, because I've seen so much trauma in the ER and everything. And, you know, also in this past 3 years, I lost two nurses who used to work for me. I lost a front desk person, both grandparents. Um, those are the ones I can remember. And so knowing how precious life is, I've always thought about it with my daughter being 10 is like one day, if nothing else, these lessons can be her lessons. She can always come back and listen to this and hear either what I thought, why I thought it, what it meant, but hopefully give kind of like the podcast, give her perspective, maybe let her avoid making some of the mistakes that I did. Like alcohol is not good for me. So it's just best I don't do it. My birthday will be 1 year sober. So from alcohol.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, I mean, it's like, but it's kind of one of those things. It's just, I'm an asshole when I drink it. I'm good for a little bit, but then I just have this tipping point that, and it's really not that. My behavior can kind of be controlled depending on the environment and the people I'm around, but it's the depression that it causes the days after. And then when you're trying to raise that dopamine back up, the easiest way to raise it was to drink again. And so at some point, and when I learned that, when I started listening to this podcast, it was like, I think it's called that maybe Stop Drinking Coach or something, Barty Arez. And I think he's here in Austin. But when he started explaining how it was with the dopamine, like redlining your dopamine, like an RPM, and then it's dipping back so low, and then it's taking days to get back just to baseline. Once I understood that, after coming off of drinking, I was like, oh, and then I went some days or weeks without it. And then it was my birthday, and I went and I had 2 margaritas at Chili's because my daughter wanted to go there for my birthday. And the 2 margaritas didn't get me drunk or anything like that, but I could already tell on the way home, like starting to feel meh. So it was like, if you don't get the buzz from it, then it was just straight up depressant. And it was like that day I was like, it's not for me. Like, it doesn't make me feel good. It's not giving me energy. And, at that time too, I still hadn't started really working out a ton. And so it was kind of like, I don't have energy. I'm overweight and I need to lose weight, and this isn't helping. And so I stopped drinking, and then it was like a month and change later, I started the podcast. But by then it was kind of like I was on a journey. Like I had started exercising because I recorded like my first episode in League City at my brother-in-law's house. And it was me and my daughter there for like a week. And, we brought her back, but it was like that's when I was starting to walk every day. And so it's like, if you listen to the podcast, you listen to some of the episodes, you can kind of see the progression even of like where I was mentally and physically, and then to where I am now. It was like, well, I know I have to exercise. And then it was kind of like, I've heard somebody describe it as, you take a pail of sand from the beach every day, you don't notice it. And then 4 to 6 months later, you're like, oh, fuck, there's a hole there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of how that happened for me was, I just slowly, but I wasn't necessarily doing it for weight loss. I think I was doing it more for the mental part of it.
100%.
To kind of keep myself busy and whatnot. And from not drinking. And I can definitely tell when I do or don't like exercise. And now at 47, I look at it more like, I'm not trying to be jacked or Brad Pitt or anything. I'm just trying to be healthy. I got a 10-year-old daughter, and I'm trying to live longer. And both my grandparents had dementia, and it runs in our family. Their parents had dementia. And so it's like trying to take care of your brain, trying to take care of your health. It just means something totally different,
I'm right there with you. I'm kind of like, I'm not really worried about being Brad Pitt. I'm worried about ball pits. You know what I mean? So, hey, I wanted to ask you, so far, what's your biggest like surprise takeaway from doing the podcast? What's something that's happened with the podcast that you were like, man, I didn't know that was going to happen? Like even from a personal standpoint of growth, because you got to have I feel like I've had quite a few. You got to have some.
Interviewing the podcast that drops tomorrow, Next Level University, Kevin Palmieri, because him and his business partner, they've been doing it 6 years. They just reached $1 million in their business, their coaching business.
Wow.
And 1 million listens or downloads.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
So, and I told him whenever I interviewed him, and this is the most interesting thing, was I said, it was actually, I had seen like some of the posts and I'd heard them talking about it. And then when I heard it on the podcast, because they do daily episodes, but like 20 minutes. And it was the first time I ever thought the difference of, they're not saying we had hit 1 million listens and $1 million like to brag. They're showing this is the value they added to the world.
Yeah.
That's what that means. That's what that number means. Because I go, look, him and his business partner could have invested in McDonald's franchise and made $1 million. It doesn't mean they're adding any fucking value to the world.
No.
So they have this thing, Next Level University, Next Level Nation. They do group coaching. I think they do individual coaching, different things like that. So that was surprising, getting to interview a couple of musicians I wanted to. Just sometimes I think it's like some of the surprises are just, you reach out to somebody who you might want to interview and they say yes. Some of the surprises have been.
How often do you release an episode? Every other week? Every week? What do you do?
I do weekly, but I just switched to twice a week.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to start doing twice a week because since joining Podmatch, I have 32 scheduled interviews.
Wow.
And I can't, and they fucking keep coming. It's like Tinder for, dude. If it were Tinder, I'd be drowning in poontang. My wife wouldn't be happy, but anyway, the point is that I'm like, I want to bump it up to twice a week.
Yeah.
That way, I can do it in half the time, and hopefully that will put me on course for like reaching 100 episodes in 9 months or so.
Well, I was going to say, you have to be experienced that like, it takes a drive and consistency to like twice a week that you have to be on it. I have to do this. It has to become a priority. It has to be like a job. So I got to assume it's taught you, a lot about yourself, about just self-drive, right? And making commitments to yourself of like, I'm going to release an episode on Monday, every Monday, regardless. It has to be there. An episode has to come out. You know what I mean?
Well, and so when I was saying before that, I started it in July and it was kind of hit or miss until October, November. And then I released an episode called Consistency and Something Else. And that was kind of my promise to myself and the listener that it was never going to work on this. I do it what I think it's supposed to be, or when I think I'm supposed to do it, that it has to be consistent.
Has to be.
It's kind of been this journey of going double down if this is what you want and go do it. And you're learning all the skills, you're doing all the stuff because, like the guy from Podmatch said, your only job really as a podcaster is to put out podcast episodes consistently.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't have to do the social media. Like if you want to, you can do a few things. You can do clips, you can do YouTube, this and that.
But if you're a podcast, you have to have episodes.
And only do what you can do.
That's right.
Consistently. And that was my thing was, and we even talked about this with a group podcast we did about New Year's resolutions. I didn't make a resolution this year. My resolution was consistency, was a word for my life.
Right.
Of keep exercising, keep doing the podcast. Or like some of those people say, like every 90 days, look at what you do and go, everything you consume, whatever it is there something I should not be doing that I can stop and give up or automate, delegate, is there something I'm doing that I need to continue doing? And then is there something I need to do that I'm not doing? So like for me, I'm like, maybe I'll give up Uber. What should I continue to do? I know I should continue to exercise, produce podcast episodes completely. And I was like, what's something that I can add that's going to move the needle of something I want? Dropping 2 episodes a week. Because I said, if nothing else, it's going to be, I'm getting in the reps, all this stuff.
This final segment is brought to you by HeyJustBe.com. I believe that achieving balance in the mental, physical, and metaphysical aspects of your purpose through learning, serving, and creating can transform your life into one you truly enjoy living. Want to learn more? Visit www.heyjustbe.com.
How I usually wrap this thing up is I ask people, what do they do to just be the best versions of themselves so they can be good for everybody else? And you have named, you work out, right? Are you do your podcast is probably some level of like stress relief. It's like
it's a form of, so I journal heavily. Journal.
Love journalers because I'm not good about journaling. I journal in very unique, different ways.
So one fun fact sort of is I don't sleep a lot. I wake up very early. And so I'm able to go into the office and have a lot of alone time first thing in the morning. And so that little bit of alone time in the morning, let's say minus physical exercise, is where I take care of that mental piece. And I've recently started going in, and normally I would kind of go straight to the computer, maybe read news, start in on emails, whatever, because it's quiet. But what I've started doing is, it's probably been about 3 weeks, is I've started going into my office where I record, and I have a chair, and I try to sit there. I set a timer for 5 minutes, and sometimes I'll do 2 5 minutes, and I just try to sit in silence and kind of let my mind go where it wants, kind of try to focus on breathing. Allergies have been bad, so half the time it's like, my nose is fucking stuffy. So I'm thinking about changing it from first thing in the morning till maybe whatever. But then I usually go and I go to my desk and I journal. And sometimes I put on a podcast and sometimes I put on binaural beats. And I journal, and then sometimes I will do like a 369 writing, manifestation writing in a journal. And then I usually kind of listen to a podcast, whatever, do a little bit of work. And that kind of is my quiet time. And then daughter wakes up, depends on who's taking her to school. And then once everybody's off to school and work, I go to the gym. And then I usually come home from the gym and start working on the podcast till everybody's home. But generally, I would say journaling, exercising, and a lot of, I would say, listening to podcasts in a way, like enriching myself, audible, kind of like what you had discussed with Sargent guy, Claude Sargent,
Oh,
about
yeah.
what does meditation mean to you? And it
Right.
can mean, whether it's foam rolling, there's some places you just hit that zone. And so I'm kind of looking for, journaling as a way for that for me. But I definitely want to play around with that sit in silence. But after listening to that today, it definitely gave me a new perspective as to maybe journal in silence, and maybe what I consider my meditation might be something different. It might take on a different meaning, kind of after hearing what you guys had discussed, that, everybody has that kind of sit in silence idea, but it doesn't have to be that. But also, because I'm up so early and everybody else is asleep, I don't do anything super crazy. So the sitting in silence is kind of I don't know. It's not bad. I think too many people are afraid to sit in silence.
Okay. One, I heard Rick Rubin tell this story. He does transcendental meditation. I heard him tell this story that he did transcendental meditation from LA to New York on a flight, the whole flight.
Wow.
Like he did meditation the whole flight. And I was like, that is crazy. Like I don't even know. I don't even know how. I don't know how you do that. Like I don't know how you just trance out like for a whole flight, right? But I think the real key is that you have to make time for yourself. But it has to be real time for yourself, not like time for yourself watching Housewives or whatever, not like time for yourself like doom scrolling, like just walking, like just going on walks or sitting in silence, or maybe sitting listening to music or journaling, or just something that allows, like, I'm sure you ever zone out when you drive just thinking about stuff, right? Like
or
you
if I'm stoned in the shower.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, just, time just to process your day ahead, the day you had. It breeds gratefulness. Gratitude is grown in that, because I mean, man, like just littlest things will happen and I'll just be like, oh, I'm so grateful. I'll just, like, a lot of times I'll just see homeless people and I'm just like, holy shit, man, I have a house. Like, and I like, and I'm not in a house where like I'm worried about, like, I won't be able to pay. I can pay my mortgage.
Right.
And how grateful just that one thing I should be. And that's been like huge for me.
I remember one day they were having like a picnic. It might have been the eclipse. My wife was going to my daughter's school to spend with the eclipse with her. My daughter didn't want me to go because it was going to be her friend. It was like the moms and the girls. But I picked up Chick-fil-A and I was trying to meet my wife at an intersection so she could make it, because we were both in town at this weird time. And I remember needing like a cup of ice. And there was a Wendy's across the street from where I met my wife. And I went over there and I'm like, I'll have a cup of ice or a cup of water. Fully expected to pay for it. And the lady gave it to me for free. And I was like, thank you. Like, something so small, a cup of ice. But to me, I find it kind of reminds me of that saying, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you can be grateful for a little, you can be grateful for a lot. If you can be, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, can entrust you with a little, they can entrust you with a lot. So if you can be trusted with pennies, you could probably be trusted with millions. If you'll give away your last $5, and I do this all the time when I'm Ubering, when people cash tip me, if I see a homeless person or I saw a guy and his wife who was at the 4-way stop with a baby saying they needed food or milk or something, I had cash tips. I give it away, and guess what? It always comes back to me.
Always.
And I'm like, so I just, and that's kind of, in this process of stopping alcohol, walking, and not only is the physical exercise that dopamine hit and good for your body and good to keep you healthy and living long for your family and the people you love, but that listening to a podcast or something, enriching yourself, listening to an audiobook, listening to something on whether it's mindset, psychology, change behavior, any of those things,
Self-improvement,
all that, focusing on all that stuff has kind of, that consistently has stepped me the furthest and led me to, whether it's the loss of 47 pounds, down from 9 prescriptions to 2 prescriptions.
congratulations.
Thank you. I look at that and I go, okay, I've made some progress.
Yeah.
The things I'm doing are working. And even though it's been kind of stepped, like I didn't get sick and all that stuff, and I'd actually dropped to 170 at some point when I was working at the smoke shop and tattoo place. Actually,
and sex shop.
yeah, I had dropped to like 170 something and then ballooned back up to almost 200. And yeah, now I'm back down, but it was still kind of all those things. There was some point in time I was just like, why am I taking all this stuff? Why do I want to do this the rest of my life? And just slowly starting to make little changes at a time.
Look, we're back to zombie apocalypse. You don't want to be on medication
No.
if there's a zombie apocalypse, because everybody that needs medications is going to be crashing those pharmacies, plus all the drug heads. So, like, I mean, you don't want to be on medication in a zombie apocalypse. That's my rule of thumb.
Even the ADD.
Yeah,
people.
all of it. Yeah.
But you know what? Not only that, though. When I worked in the ER, you know those patient belonging bags, like they put your shit in? I can remember seeing guys with that whole thing full of medicine. And you're like, you want to know why you're fucking sick. All that.
It's that bag.
But then I can remember I was always impressed when an old grandma who's like in her 80s or 90s
had like one
would fall and be like, I take an aspirin a day.
Yeah.
And you're like, because you're like, holy cow, like, because usually if an old person, something like that happens, it can mean a hip fracture. It can mean a lot of things, bedridden and all kinds of stuff. So it was always stood out when somebody who was old, in good spirits and whatever it was, and you go, they don't fucking take, or they take one medicine and that's it.
I went to go get a checkup and the lady goes, I'm 48. She goes, what medications do you take? And I go, I don't take any. And she goes, you don't take any? And I go, no, I don't take any. I go, is that wrong or is it okay? And she goes, I don't have anyone that's your age that comes in here that doesn't take medication. And I was like, wow, that's like crazy.
It is. It's like, I don't know. That's, and part of what helped me to stop drinking and all that was psilocybin, a couple macrodoses, a lot of microdoses, but also like cannabis edibles.
Healthy alternatives.
And the cannabis edibles helped me get off sleeping medication, helped me get off muscle relaxers. I would beg to say that that's what helped me get off one blood pressure medication, because it naturally kind of,
I'm not saying you're wrong,
but I would say those are the things that I'm okay with, like for me, that I find acceptable for me.
Well, man, did you have fun being the guest instead of the host? I know you said you've done other podcasts.
Yeah. This was a lot cooler in person.
For sure. Yeah. That's the vibe I'm trying to hit.
But definitely too, I think, like, you and I have a lot in common, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it's kind of it's definitely, like, I mean, the one I was on yesterday it wasn't bad, but like, she's like, she's got a syndicated show through BYU. It's different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of freedom around here.
Right. Well, and that's kind of one of the things is, it's so crazy. That's the great thing about the podcast world is there's these big ones, and then there's
indie ones. And
but the thing is what y'all said on the podcast, like Timmy, again, it's like, working for yourself just has to be,
it's the greatest, freest feeling.
and that's what I always wanted was freedom.
Yeah.
I thought I wanted
Structure.
structure. What else do you call that? Security and high paying job kind of a type of thing. But what I've come to understand is freedom. I don't have to call. I don't have to ask. I don't have to, when my daughter's sick or needs to be picked up,
You can be there.
I don't have to ask. I don't have to justify. I don't have to worry about a write-up. I don't have to worry about how many times I've been absent. I don't have to worry about shit. And to me, there's really nothing that can replace that.
Yeah.
And nor nothing should. And, and we've gotten so twisted that we put all these stipulations on people, and they got their own lives and kids. And, and it's like, should two people be having to debate who's going to take off or call in to stay home with their child who's sick?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, should that be I don't know. I would just always tell people, you just take care of your shit.
Yeah.
Don't worry about here till you need to worry about it. Because if you don't get yourself or your kids better, then you're not going to be any good here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's definitely changed the way I look at things, and a lot has changed.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot's going to continue to change, and I'm just trying to enjoy the ride for as much as it's worth.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you coming down here.
Yes.
And all the way down here. I usually ask everybody, give me a hug. You can push your mic out and give me a hug. Oh, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. I have to get down.